Today we're going to explore something that is strongly linked to what we call dialectical thinking from a schema therapy perspective. This particular way of seeing the world opens up the possibility of sustainable change and the activation of the stories we hold in our system that are connected to what we now know as our maladaptive and ineffective schema and the different parts of our personality that are reacting to them with their rigid behavioural response. We do this not by removing the maladaptive and ineffective schema completely, instead finding the balance in our stories to give a subjective point of view that removes the burden of responsibility being held by our parts to protect the vulnerable child. So today, let's have a conversation about the process of unburdening. If you've ever attended any of the online groups that I facilitate or done any one-on-one work with me, you're probably used to hearing the term of unburdening floating around inside of the conversation. This incredibly important word is used to describe the process we go through to release the burden of responsibility being held in our system by specific parts of our personality that are generally influenced by the presence of a particular type of schema. This responsibility is often held with a degree of rigidity that has an absolute or all or nothing feel to it. And it's this extremely rigid perspective that has us repeating the same behaviours time and time again, then wondering why we keep doing the same old thing when it's really not helping us to live the life we want to live, or in particular, be the person we want to be. When a schema gets activated, it's tied to the experiences we've had in the past. These experiences are then subconsciously connected to our familiar emotional and therefore behavioural responses. Basically, we're constantly reacting to the emotional experience that's generated by the story we've created about the current situation. Sometimes this story is right on the money and it lines up with everything that's actually happening. When this is the case, our system usually, but not always, responds with parts of our personality using different modes of behaviour that keep us in line with living the life we want to live and being the person we want to be. On the flip side, dialectically speaking, of course, sometimes these stories are out of line with what's actually going on because they're a representation of our previous experiences rather than the facts about the current situation. The stories that are connected to these previous experiences are usually generated during childhood, and we're reenacting these early situations based on a familiarity in the current environment, often with a rigid behavioural response that's trying to meet an unmet childhood need in the only way we currently know how. As I've said a number of times before, we're not looking to remove the schema that we're labelling as ineffective and maladaptive completely from our system. To do this would actually be a somewhat dangerous thing to do because there may be times when the story we've generated is actually completely accurate for the situation that we're in. When this is the case, we work on the mode of behaviour we use in response to the story, making sure it's one that's effective for us to live the life we want to live and be the person that we want to be. When it's not the case that the story is justified, we want to reflect on the situation and develop our skills for looking at the world from a new and dialectical perspective. This helps us to see the balance between our maladaptive and ineffective stories and the possibility of an adaptive and effective point of view. First of all, it is really important to have a solid foundation for doing this type of work in place prior to taking it on. Utilizing the creation of your support network, routine and structure, and taking care of your physical well-being by practicing the DBT skills of mindfulness and distress tolerance every single day. I'll leave some links to all the content available on the YouTube channel and the website about these subjects in the description below, so please take a look at them before you start to do this work on your own. With these things in place, you're working towards living the life you want to live and you're practicing the skills that give you the capability to notice the parts of your personality that are in distress and unblend from their domination within your personality system. Journaling every single day gives you the insight for the schemas that are creating a problem in your behavioral responses. So next, we have to link the maladaptive and ineffective stories to their counteracting effective and adaptive counterparts. Next, you're going to see a list of the common connections that with practice we can actually start to make in the world that we're living so we can be the person we want to be and react in ways that are healthy, effective, and adaptive to the difficult situations that we find ourselves in. Now that we've got an idea of the stories that we're working with, the schema that they're connected to, and the balanced point of view that we're trying to create, we can use the skills of distress tolerance and emotion regulation to do the work we need to do so we can remove the rigid response of our parts to our challenging emotional experiences. Now, this is something that we have to do away from our in-the-moment experiences, and it takes a willingness to spend time practicing the skills. First, we have to develop our understanding of whether or not the schema we're working with is something that's an accurate representation of our current situation or not. We do this by learning how to effectively use the DBT skill of checking the facts. For example, if I'm working with a schema of social isolation, which revolves around the feelings of loneliness that go with beliefs that we don't fit in and we don't belong. To check the facts away from in-the-moment activation, I want to explore the question, is this story justified in every area of my life? For some of us, it might be easy to see the evidence against this schema without the support of others. When we look at the people we connect with, we can see that there are some places that we do belong and some that we do not. This is actually the dialectical perspective that we're trying to create. Sometimes we may need to brainstorm with other people though to problem solve our current circumstances so we can see the counteracting story of, in this case, social belonging. Now, if it is the case that it's true and we simply don't belong or we don't fit in anywhere, which to be honest is highly unlikely by the way, then we want to explore why this might be true. Are we looking to fit in with people we've got absolutely nothing in common with? And if this is the case, why am I persisting with the current plan of action when it's causing problems in my system? Maybe we've got unrealistic expectations on who we're supposed to fit in with. Are we fishing in the wrong pond, looking for a salmon in a pond full of trout? So we need to examine the pond we're fishing in, look at how and where we're building our tribe and how we can shift our expectation to match our actual needs. If it's the case that it's really not true all the time, which is usually how it is, and in actuality we are accepted, we do belong to a tribe, we're just not seeing it in the moment, then we take the action of completing a RAAVEN Skill worksheet to create the narrative we need for planning ahead to build mastery so we can prepare for the activation of this schema in the future. With the RAAVEN worksheet completed, we now set aside the time to actually do the imagery work required for building sustainable change. This is the key aspect of making the changes that we're trying to make. Knowing something doesn't change the way we feel about it when there's a part of our personality holding on to a specific story. In planning ahead to build mastery, we recreate the recent situation, a particular place in time when the schema that we're trying to remove the rigidity for was active within our personality system. We do this by imagining the circumstance in which it last played out, and if we're going to do this effectively, we have to connect with the sensual experience we had at that time to feel as though we're actually back in the moment. What did we see? What did we hear? What smells were in the air? What taste was in our mouth? Or what physical sensations were we having at that time? With a lot of practice and a basic capacity to sit in a degree of uncomfortable feelings, this reactivates the part that was present at that time, which begins the behavioural response of that part trying to blend within our personality system. Now, when I first started doing this type of work myself, it was usually at this point in time when my different protectors would kick in. I'd feel a level of distress in my system that had me wanting to just get up and walk away, to do something that would take me out of this uncomfortable emotional experience as fast as it possibly could. So if you find yourself getting overwhelmed when trying to participate in this type of activity, know that this is completely understandable and actually totally okay. Go back and take a look at the distress tolerance skills that we've explored before. Increase your practice of accepts and improve. Spend some time developing the capability to sit in the uncomfortable feelings for a little longer each time and have a healthy distraction or self-soothing exercise ready to go straight after you do. This teaches the part which is probably filled with fear for what will happen if you sit with the emotional experience that you're trying to sit with, that you can cope with the feelings in a healthy way, and you do have the skills to do this type of work. When the level of distress is tolerable for you and your system, go ahead and start the process by imagining your system using the stop skill. In other words, teach the part to stop and don't react. take a big deep breath to calm your system and begin rehearsing the use of the RAAVEN skill we previously created to recognize and acknowledge the part that's present in the moment. Bring gratitude and appreciation to its purpose, not its story, and validate the feelings and fears that it's reacting to. Educate the part on the facts of the situation compared to the story it's holding on to, and begin pointing out the evidence you have for the counteracting schema. The negotiation aspect of the RAAVEN skill is once again to ask for this part's permission to experience the new thing that we're asking it to experience, which in the example that I used earlier is about asking the part to let us proceed with caution without it flooding our system with its usual behavioural reaction, so we can demonstrate to this part that we do belong, that we do fit in, and that we are accepted by other people. If it's the situation we're imagining is one where we don't fit in and we actually don't want to because these particular people are not part of our true authentic tribe, point out the reasons why we don't fit in and why they aren't a part of our tribe, but bring the part back to the areas of life where we do. The DBT skill of paying attention to positive events points these things out to the parts involved with this particular story and builds the self-trust that we're trying to build. Using these skills from a wise mind perspective is an essential aspect of this process. When this mindfulness exercise is practiced with compassion and consistency, it informs the part in question that it no longer needs to protect the vulnerable child in the way it previously did, removing the rigid belief that the schema it was reacting to is 100% accurate 100% of the time. One of the statements that I hear on a regular basis in group and one-on-one work is that, well, I know this to be true, but it doesn't change the way I feel about it. To make this new dialectical perspective something the parts in our system actually feel, not just something that they know, we rehearse this activation over and over again, putting in the practice we need to build self-trust. Remembering all the time that when you think you've practiced this skill enough, practice the skill some more to overlearn the process and increase the probability of it activating when we need it the most. When practiced with consistency, future activations of this once dominant schema become less and less impactful. Instead, when the facts don't line up with the story, our system kicks into action with this new healthy adult response. The part of our personality that holds the old schema trusts that the story it once believed was simply just a fact 100% of the time is no longer as rigid as it was once thought to be. In the PDF at the bottom of the page connected to this video, you're going to find a modified version of the RAAVEN skill worksheet to help you with this process. If you can, download it and use it in conjunction with all the other skills that we've talked about here to build the practice we need to make sustainable change. As always, if you like the content of this video, please subscribe to the channel, smash that like button and turn on the notifications to get all the latest from me and the Liberation Place. If you want to know more, come join the live online meetings that I facilitate each week for free on Zoom. I'll leave a link to the page containing more information about these meetings in the description below. I hope this video gave you some insight for how we use the RAAVEN skill to help remove our rigid perspective for a dominant, maladaptive and ineffective schema within our personality system. Thanks for watching. See you again soon. Take care, be safe and be well.